I think ETH is a contrarian play in crypto. I think there are elements of the fundamentals of ETH that are extremely strong. It's directly exposed to the growth in stablecoins, in tokenization, in AI's use of crypto. It's the center of those trends, but it's been suffering from sort of a philosophical challenge it's been having on how to monetize that user growth and how should it structure its architecture. I think until it works through, I hate to use these words, but until it works through the bad vibes, which I think could take another 6+ months, I think it's going to be a challenged asset. For long-term investors, I think there's a strong fundamental case to be made for Ethereum long-term because the growth in users on layers 2s is phenomenal. The utility is really interesting.
In a no-holds-barred interview with Bitwise, Matt Hougan, a top-tier crypto analyst, drops truth bombs about the markets, exposing what the elites would rather keep quiet. Armed with deep knowledge of the crypto battlefield, Hougan breaks down the hidden forces shaping Bitcoin's explosive future. And trust us, it's not what they teach in finance school. Hougan doesn't hold back when addressing Ethereum's rocky road. Despite being at the center of innovations like stablecoins, AI integration, and tokenization, Ethereum is battling philosophical shackles that big money players aren't ready to touch. Until these issues are tackled, long-term investors may be walking on thin ice. However, Layer 2 adoption is surging, unlocking a mind-blowing potential that could change the game forever. And then, Hougan gets to the real bombshells, the tariff wars, government power plays, and the coming crypto regulations. While regulators scramble to keep control, Bitcoin's dominance refuses to bow down. It's the macro asset governments can't silence, and Hougan's insights paint a future they don't want you to see. Let's watch clips from Matt Hougan's interview to gain more insight. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and enable notifications for additional in-depth content. Thanks for joining us again. Enjoy the video.
When you look at where we are right now around tariffs and the potential of what this is going to do to the economy, the United States economy, and as well as global economy, how do you see this playing out within the investment community?
Yeah, I think you have to think about initial effects and second order effects. When we look at initial effects, of course, this was negative for markets and particularly for risk assets because people freaked out, assuming we were going to have an economic down, a pullback, higher inflation, higher rates, all the things that risk assets hate. And you saw that hit crypto in particular because, of course, crypto trades on the weekend when the rest of the market does not.
Yeah.
The second order effects, though, is what we have our eyes on. I think if you think about what Donald Trump is hoping to achieve, he's hoping to achieve ultimately lower dollar, a weaker dollar against other currencies. I know that sounds paradoxical with tariffs, but that's his long-term goal is a weaker dollar, lower interest rates, lower taxes. If he achieves those ends, then that's going to send risk assets sharply higher. We think on balance, that's the more likely scenario. But look, anyone looking at this market has to admit that there's more risk and uncertainty than there was in the past. That's a headwind. Long term, I think it's going to end up being a catalyst. This is definitely the new normal. The old world still thinks you can release news on Friday and give the world 2+ days to digest it, but that's no longer true. People now have, multi-billion-dollar liquidity into macro assets, whether it's crypto or it's gold, and they're used to expressing their views in those assets. And so I do think we're in a new era. I don't think you can put the genie back in the bottle. Again, those days of, surprisingly many 4:30 p.m. Friday press conferences, that's over, right? That era's over. Now, Bitcoin is the leading macro asset for reflecting short-term trading views. Gold is right behind it. And that's, as you said, that's just the new normal. I think the altcoin space is waiting for this regulatory clarity that we've been talking about. It's waiting for a fundamental catalyst. I don't necessarily think we're going to see the kind of waterfall cycle that we've seen in the past where money immediately flows from Bitcoin to ETH and down the capitalization spectrum. I think there's more specific interest in Bitcoin, specific interest in ETH, specific interest in Sol. So I think the market may have changed a little bit. One reason for that, Paul, is I think we've shifted from a market that's primarily based on speculation to one that's based on speculation, but also fundamental utility, right? You can talk about revenues in ETH, you can talk about users in Solana, you can talk about the fundamentals for many of these blockchains in a way you couldn't 4 years ago. So I think the
Right.
cycle looks a little bit different now. I mean, my personal view on a base case scenario and what I think is priced into the market is that it's Bitcoin only. What that means for you as an investor is if an outlier scenario happens, or you have a particular view, or you're listening to people and you're seeing photos of Brad Garlinghouse and senators, and you think that something is going to happen that's more than Bitcoin, well, that I don't think is priced into the market. So that's kind of how I think about it. I think about what my base case is, and then what the external scenarios could be, and I think that's how I view the market.
What are your thoughts on bank custody? Do you think that's going to happen soon, this year? What's the cycle that we could expect?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to happen as fast as the banks can possibly move, which isn't as fast as crypto moves, but is pretty fast. They all want in on custody. They all want in on stablecoins. You know, the famous thing going around is that Tether made almost as money as Goldman Sachs last year. Goldman Sachs doesn't like that. Right? JP Morgan doesn't like that. Bank of America doesn't like that. They don't like other people making money in a financial service, which is what that is. So they're waiting at the doors. As soon as they have anything that looks like a regulatory green light, they're going to come slamming in. And, you know, at Bitwise, we talk to those firms all the time. They're very serious. They have very serious teams with very serious people, and they want in because it's a big and growing market. I mean, this is part of what crypto is and how it works, which is there is a news event that caused the price to drop. There's a lot of leverage and a lot of smart contract and DeFi organizations within crypto that get stopped out and liquidated, causing the price to drop more. And you have to wait for that over leverage to be washed out of the system. Once it is, there's no one left to sell, and it bounces straight back up. And people, you know, can see to some degree where that leverage exists in the system by looking at where those positions are and estimating where it is at the bottom. But this has been happening in crypto for time immemorial. The lesson to investors, this often happens on weekends, which are low liquidity periods, which is why this can be amplified, is unless you're a short-term trader, you have to just sit on your hands because it moves so fast and there's this cascading liquidation thing. And there are people at the bottom with, that you said, Brinks trucks waiting for the inevitable bounce. And that's just an old story in crypto. I think ETH is a contrarian play in crypto. I think there are elements of the fundamentals of ETH that are extremely strong. It's directly exposed to the growth in stablecoins, in tokenization, in AI's use of crypto. It's the center of those trends, but it's been suffering from sort of a philosophical challenge it's been having on how to monetize that user growth and how should it structure its architecture. I think until it works through, I hate to use these words, but until it works through the bad vibes, which I think could take another 6+ months, I think it's going to be a challenged asset. For long-term investors, I think there's a strong fundamental case to be made for Ethereum long-term because the growth in users on layers 2s is phenomenal. The utility is really interesting, but it has to work through these sort of community bad vibes before it gets to the other side, and it hasn't done that yet.
Matt Hougan remarked that the investment community is closely monitoring the tariffs' impact on the U.S. and worldwide economy. Initially, markets reacted badly, with risk assets such as cryptocurrency falling. However, Hougan believes that the second-order consequences, particularly Donald Trump's ambition of obtaining a weaker dollar, lower interest rates, and reduced taxes, will eventually send risk assets considerably higher. Matt Hougan stated that Bitcoin is the leading macro asset for representing short-term trading views, closely followed by gold. He expects bank custody to be implemented shortly, as banks want to participate in custody and stable currency. He further argued that Ethereum is a contrarian investment with excellent fundamentals but philosophical problems. Let's watch more clips from the interview. Why did
gold reacts so differently than Bitcoin on this news? Obviously, with tariffs playing into this, gold is the greatest secure asset, but Bitcoin, I would assume, has a similar response to most investors. What were your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I think Bitcoin's going to catch right up and then exceed gold. So it is the case that gold ran in this case. I don't know if that's investors imagining that foreign sovereign banks will roll off dollar assets and roll more aggressively into gold, which has certainly been a trend that we've been seeing. Perhaps it was just the type of investors who are in this market. Bitcoin's also has more elements of a risk asset, so it often has a one-day pullback.
Right.
But I think if you look in a week, my guess is that Bitcoin has outperformed gold and has more than caught up from that move.
Is there anything that you're seeing right now with what Elon Musk is doing that you're saying, hey, this could be good for markets, this could be good especially for risk markets in the future? Anything that you're picking out?
He's making big claims about how successful he is being right now at cutting spending, right? He's talking about getting down $4 billion a day, getting to the point where the US budget deficit is cut in half. Obviously, if that happens, that will give us space to lower interest rates significantly without sort of inflation picking up. And that will be very good for risk assets. I think we need to see sort of the receipts of that happening.
Yeah.
If the early indications are true and we're getting back to a more normal level of government spending, that is ultimately, in my view, extremely positive for all sorts of assets and is something we should be rooting for. I think it would be phenomenal, whichever blockchain they choose. I think it would be a proof of concept for something about the blockchain industry that people don't talk about, which you can have proof of information at a given time. So one of the reasons you would put this kind of information on the blockchain is it's stamped indelibly and can be available to everyone and can never be changed in the future, right? It's one way of the government not telling citizens to trust us,
right,
but showing exactly what we did when forever, that anyone can look into at any point in time and that they never have a chance to change. And so I think that would be a great thing for governments to do, and it would certainly benefit whichever blockchain they choose, just because it would be sort of a government stamp of approval for blockchain X, Y, or Z. But I do think it would be great to see it happen.
Okay, so I got to ask you this: which ones do you think you might choose here? I mean, you got Ripple's on the table, Avalanche's on the table. There's a lot here. Hedera's on the table. What do you think?
Yeah, I think they might choose multiple, is my guess.
Okay.
And then that would be good for the overall scope of society. I don't know that they'll want to pick a winner or a loser. We have seen state governments pick winners and losers, right? I think it was California put vehicle ownership on Avalanche. But I don't know that the national government is going to want to pick one winner. I think that would be challenging. My guess is they will pick multiple. You know, specific to crypto, I think a lot of crypto investors are still fighting yesterday's wars. And yesterday's wars were all about macro. My actual view is that what's happening specifically to crypto matters more than what's happening on the macro side. So David Sachs' press conference matters more than the tariffs. But the crypto short-term trading environment hasn't yet realized that. So I think as they do, we'll start to see some of that volatility come out of the market and be more crypto specific. It's a little bit funny to talk about the macro economy and, you know, say what's happening on tariffs and taxation is so volatile and what's happening in crypto is so steady. But that's actually the case. That's actually where we are today. So, you know, look, we're in for a volatile period across multiple markets, but the long-term story from crypto is still extraordinarily strong, and the trends there are playing out over years, not over days.
Will this be a catalyst for crypto? Will this be the true coming out moment now in the Super Bowl, even though I don't know if everybody's watching the Super Bowl these days, but what do you think?
Oh man, I wasn't ready for this question. I don't know. You know, Super Bowl question. You know, there is this history of Super Bowl ads being a top. So that question makes me a little bit nervous, if I'm being honest. I don't think it's the case here. I think the top is still a long ways away, but this particular point you're raising is making me a little uncomfortable.
Matt Hougan stated that gold reacted differently to Bitcoin following the news, likely due to its perceived safe haven status. He noted that investors may have flocked to gold, imagining foreign sovereign banks would roll off dollar assets and invest in gold. He expressed his view that Bitcoin will catch up and exceed gold in the long run. Hougan also mentioned that Elon Musk's efforts to cut spending could have a positive impact on risk assets, particularly if it leads to lower interest rates. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's price has fluctuated, trading around $97,000 after falling to $95,707.35 and soaring at $100,154.14 in the previous 24 hours. Despite a 0.48% rise in the last day, Bitcoin is still down 6.50% over the past week, indicating persistent market volatility. The most recent U.S. jobs data shows that 143,000 jobs were gained in January, falling short of economists' expectations. However, the unemployment rate fell to 4.0%, indicating a mixed economic outlook. This information may influence Federal Reserve policy decisions on interest rates, potentially affecting Bitcoin's price. A halt in hiring could fuel speculation about future interest rate reductions, which usually support Bitcoin by making alternative assets more appealing. Trading volume has climbed by 14.65% to $52.33 billion in the last 24 hours, indicating greater activity as traders react to macroeconomic events. Bitcoin's overall market capitalization is $1.93 trillion, indicating that it continues to dominate the cryptocurrency field. Bitcoin dominance has increased marginally to 60.8%, indicating that capital is accumulating in BTC while altcoins remain under pressure. Futures markets have also experienced a minor increase, with total BTC futures open interest climbing by 1.18% to $59.44 billion. Do you think Matt Hougan's predictions about Bitcoin and Ethereum will hold in the current market? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. Share this video and hit the like button. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.